Good morning and happy Thursday from the Environmental Learning Centers of Connecticut. We're here on the Indian Rock Nature Preserve where our reptiles and amphibians are temporarily housed from the Barnes Nature Center. But this morning we are going to continue learning about some native animals here in Connecticut that you can see outside. So this morning's spot is going to be on this animal. And you might recognize it. It is the gray fox. So we're going to talk a little bit about the natural history of this animal. And we're going to talk a little bit about management of this area, of this animal. So in Connecticut, we have the gray fox and we have the red fox. The biggest difference you can spot right away is the color difference. So our gray fox here is much more gray, but definitely does have some red. So our gray fox does have pointed ears. Since this is a taxidermy mount, they are folded down. We can't stick them up, but they are pointed. We've got a long snout, a little bit of a longer snout. We've got a very thick, bushy tail. The legs are slightly shorter on the gray fox compared to the red fox. Underneath the throat here and a little bit on the chest is white, but along the neck and the legs and the belly we get a nice rich color similar to the red fox. So the gray fox likes woodlands, dense deciduous woodlands, so broadleaf trees, not so much pines, thickets and swampy areas. They're on the smaller side. The average weight is about 10 pounds. Males and females are very, very similar in size. And if we check out these teeth, they're going to give us clues to what this animal is eating. So if you've been following along with some of our other Facebook Live videos, we have been looking at some skulls of various animals and how teeth are so important for giving us clues to what this animal eats. So right away up front, we see incisors, canines, and then we have molars. So the gray fox is primarily a predator. They're going to be eating other animals. Rabbits, mice, voles, chipmunks, squirrels, birds. But they're not just eating other animals. They're not just eating meat. They will also eat plants. They're going to eat berries. And diet is going to change depending on the season, depending on what is available to them. So a lot of small mammals will be eaten in the wintertime, where comes spring, we're going to eat berries that are available on plants. So again, teeth are so important for giving us clues to what this animal eats and to their diet. But a little bit about the life history of the gray fox. They breed in the wintertime. Okay, from January through March about. And the gestation, the amount of time that the female is pregnant, is just under 2 months. And she'll give birth to a litter about 4 or 5 pups. And unlike the red fox, this gray fox doesn't really make an underground den, but more makes their shelter, their den, in dense brush or cavities in stumps, rock crevices, or even under your shed. But the neat thing about foxes is that they readily have more than one den available to them. So if they need to move their pups for safety, they will. Both mom and dad will take care of the babies by bringing food and guarding the den site. And after about 3 months, those babies are weaned and they join the adults to hunt, to learn to catch food. And then by the time fall comes, they are kicked out and on their own. The gray foxes are a little bit more, we might call them recluse, more recluse than the red fox. So you might see red fox a little bit more often than the gray. They are nocturnal, so they're up at night. And they're really neat as this animal will readily climb trees while hunting or for protection. But they do sound very similar to the red fox. So gray and red foxes do sound similar to each other with barks and little yaps and yelps. So both the gray and the red fox are hunted. We've got lots of money coming in from pelt harvesting. But the red fox is sought after a little bit more. If we take a really close look, this gray fox fur is a little bit more thin, more coarse. So it's a little less desirable than the really thick red fox fur. If you have a small backyard hobby farm in your backyard, say if you have ducks or chickens or sheep that will have lambs, a lot of people run into problems with foxes. So we're going to take a moment to talk a little bit about management. Okay, because foxes will prey on your rabbits, your ducks, your chickens, but they generally don't bother larger livestock. And what they do, they're going to look for any kind of weakness in your perimeter. So if you have a fence with a hole or a short fence that they can climb or a piece of your fence that they can squeeze through, they're going to try and do it. And they'll often take their prey and carry it back to a more secluded site to be eaten. So when you want to protect your livestock, you want to make sure that your fence is secure or that you have coops or pens that can be secure. Most predation occurs at night. Remember, these guys are nocturnal, so it's especially important to have protection at that time. And then other things you can do is make sure any potential food sources, including pet food, or if you've thrown food into your compost pile, or if you have a fruit tree, make sure those food sources, those extra resources are picked up. You're not going to attract the animal. And then, of course, if you have pets, like your cat or your dog, keep your cat inside. And your smaller dogs, you want to supervise, especially at night when they're outside. Another thing you hear a lot about foxes is rabies. So they are a vector species. They can carry rabies. They carry the raccoon strain of rabies. So raccoons primarily carry that strain. but foxes can get it as well. And just because you see a fox does not automatically mean it has rabies. An animal that has rabies is going to appear sick. They're going to be acting abnormal. Really aggressive, jerky movement, maybe kind of seeming dazed or confused. They've got that stereotypical foaming at the mouth. But just because you see a fox or raccoon does not mean that it has rabies, especially now during the spring. A lot of people think, oh, I see a fox or a raccoon during the daytime, it must have rabies, it's out during the day. Well, you've got to think that might not necessarily be true. Springtime, there's babies. They're most likely just moms looking for extra food, and they've got to spend extra time looking for food as well. But it's those clues of the really abnormal behavior that tell us this animal might be sick. But of course, if you see a wild animal, any wild animal, you should not be approaching it. So that is a little bit about our gray fox, a native animal here that we can see in Connecticut, even though they're a little bit more recluse. So a little bit more of a rarer sight, but you can see them. A little bit smaller than the red fox. A more gray washed out coat with red. Really great at climbing trees. They're eating both other animals and plants, berries, small mammals. We're going to be back tomorrow for Friday, back on the Environmental Learning Centers of Connecticut Facebook page at 10 a.m. for another Facebook Live. As always, if you have an environmental topic that you would like us to cover, you can always comment below on this video or message our Facebook page. But thanks for tuning in this morning to learn a little bit about Connecticut's gray fox, and we hope you join us again tomorrow.